what I'm going to say has to do with the coming of the Lord, the nature of his coming, although at that time I didn't understand that. It was more years than I hate to say, in the early 60s. I was on the mission field among the Indians and a few Eskimos up in what we call the Northwest Territories. Here's Alaska, and adjacent to it is this big territory belonging to Canada. It's not even divided up. We call it simply the Northwest Territories. So I was up there thinking I was going to give the rest of my life to these poor Indians, you know. And we had no mission board behind us. We had just gone up to help some other missionaries. So there was no check coming in every month. If anybody was living by faith, we were it. We just had to more or less live from what we could grow on the land and this sort of thing. So we had big gardens. Fortunately, we were in a place that had good soil. We had big gardens. We worked and worked and worked hours weeding those gardens. And we'd come in, have lunch, and have a little rest maybe for half an hour and go out again. And this particular day, during our rest time, Lillian, our Eskimo girl who worked with us, she and I were praying through that time. And this was our prayer. When I think of it now, it seems so childish. But we were very sincere. And I'm sure we have all prayed prayers like this in some way or another. We said, Lord, if you would only reveal yourself to us, if we could only just see you once, everything else would just seem as nothing. We can handle anything that happened in this world from henceforth, no matter how many weeds or how many children and Indians are here and all the responsibilities we have. It would be like nothing if we could just once see your beautiful face. And we prayed and prayed like this, hoping possibly he might appear to us, that we might see him. And he didn't do that, but he spoke to my heart. I will never forget it. Now, after that many words, I can't say exactly the Lord said these exact words, but this is what basically he was saying. He was saying like this, yes, I do appear in my bodily form to people at times of crisis. I do appear unto them, and sometimes they live the rest of their life just on that one time of seeing my form or of seeing my face. He said, but I have appointed unto you something far greater than having a glimpse of my resurrected body. He said, I have given you my spirit substance, who is with you always. He abides within you continually every day of your everlasting life. He's as close and nearer than hands and feet. He is always there when you need to make supplication, when you have a need. He said, and it's not just a one-time thing and it's gone, you can't ever hear from him again. He said, I have given you a greater manifestation of myself by giving you my spirit than by letting you see me for an instant in time. Well, I was fully satisfied. Fully satisfied. I said, oh, Father, I thank you. I thank you for this assurance. And it was, I guess, fall of 1996, there were tremendous hope that this would be the year when the Feast of Tabernacles would be fulfilled. People were thinking, well, they have to be somewhere at the Feast of Tabernacles this year because God is going to come down in a mighty way and the Feast of Tabernacles is going to be fulfilled. Well, we were kind of hoping that same way. And others we knew were planning to celebrate the feast, and we thought, well, we should go to this one or that one. As it happened, the Lord had us moving on those days, and we couldn't go to any of them. In fact, the Lord even didn't open up the door for them even to hold a celebration of the feast. So the Feast of Tabernacles came and went, and it looked like, oh, well, I guess nothing happened. I have a friend, Faith, and she said, well, I had made up my mind I was going to get very spiritual around Tabernacles time. I was really going to seek the Lord. I might even fast and pray. I was going to read my Bible a lot, and if he was going to come with the fullness of the Spirit, I was going to be ready. I was going to be really in a spiritual attitude. She said, I don't know. I got busy with the neighbors or something. I had to do something to help people, and the day went by. I hardly knew this was the day. And with me, I'm packing boxes, and I'm not being that spiritual. But the day came and went. But after the day came and went, I was aware that something had indeed happened. And the best way that I can say it is, and this is why I'm telling this, because when you got up to sing, the Lord just brought that to me, that when you sang that about the coming, the appearing, I thought we should discuss how shall his appearing be. It seemed like I felt his spirit starting to arise within my being, like it was waters in a well, and the well had been just maybe a foot deep, and now the waters were rising and rising and rising. And some days you felt his presence so strongly that I would just cry. And Bill said, "What's the matter? What's the Lord saying to you?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know if he's saying anything, but I feel his presence so strongly that my natural man can't handle it, and that's my reaction. I just cry." And one thing I'm aware of when this happens, when his presence increases in my heart, I'm aware that this body that I have is barely sufficient to hold what measure of spirit that I have. That if I'm going to have the fullness of the Spirit, I need to have some renovations of the body. My body needs to be changed. It needs to be able to hold the fullness of God. And so I'm not going to say, well, I entered the Feast of Tabernacles or whatever, but I do know, and I was asking the Lord, well, Lord, it looks like if you were doing something then, we all missed it. We all missed the day. And he began to speak to my heart. He said, it's the season of tabernacles. It's the season. And when the season comes, you can begin to enter into it. And many things have changed since that time. Prayer has changed, and the way of his speaking to us, even the spiritual principles that we learned in the church age, he's changed them. He's brought new spiritual principles to us. And at first I couldn't understand that. And then he caused me to understand. I'll just give you an example. And one of the spiritual principles of the church age has been, if somebody wrongs you, that if they come and confess to you that they're sorry, if they apologize, then you ought to forgive them. Is that right? Yeah. Do you do that? Okay. But you know, the Lord is changing that now. He's saying, well, that was good for that day. That was good for the measure of spirit you had back there. But now, he said, I'm expecting you to follow after a new spiritual principle, a kingdom principle, if you will. You know what, son? We can't wait for them to apologize. No, sirree. You can't wait for them to apologize. You have to forgive them even while they're still mad at you. And maybe you're a little mad at them, too. Maybe you haven't quite got over that, but you still have to forgive them. Say, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And if you don't have enough grace to forgive them, you have to ask the Lord for grace that you can have a forgiving heart. For a full year, the Lord dealt with my heart about remitting sins. He'd speak to my heart, say, whosoever sins you remit, they are remitted or forgiven. Whosoever sins you retain or keep, they are kept. And so I know that we've passed over into a new land, and we're having our hearts circumcised. Some people think, well, why aren't, if that were the case, if we really have come into tabernacles, why aren't we out there just, making a real difference in the world? Why aren't we out there really getting something done? Well, I'm sorry, but he's getting something done in us that needs to be done. Well, we kind of thought everything would be done by now. But let me tell you something. I don't know why I'm doing this. Okay, Lord. I wasn't going to share, but here I am. I'm just sharing what the Lord puts on my heart. We walked in Egypt for some years in being a Christian, but being a carnal Christian, only knowing the things of our own self, only interested in the things of ourself. Then the Lord brought us into the wilderness period of testing. And what was that all about? Why did he bring us into the wilderness? He said, I brought you here to do what? To prove you, to test you, to see what was in your heart, whether you would serve me or no. And through that period of the wilderness, We have seen very little of the gifts of the Spirit, very little healings or anything like that. We say, Lord, those people who don't know you in this way, oh, you seem to be really blessing them. They pray for the sick and they have all kinds of results and they have gifts of the Spirit, and we don't seem to have anything. And I wondered about that. The Lord spoke to me a few years back and he said, I took away the healing and the gifts from my people so that they would not serve me for the loaves and the fishes, for what they could get from me. So they would serve me for myself alone. And he said, and when their heart has been purified, that they're serving me for myself alone, then I can trust them again with not only the gifts, but the sevenfold Spirit of God, the fullness of the Spirit. He said, I cannot trust any child, even my own,